Welcome in to another episode of The Racing Report. My name is Rob Peeters, and I'm so glad to be back. I've had a nice little vacation and much needed rest and relaxation, and now I'm back to talk all about motorsports with you, the wonderful viewers here watching today on WTHR+. Before we go ahead and get started with this show, please remember that if you do like it, be sure to follow me on social media. You can do so by looking up at rpeeters33. That's RPEETERS 33, and then be sure to subscribe to WTHR on YouTube, and make sure you have that WTHR Plus app downloaded on your smart TV so you can watch live local newscasts and the latest racing report whenever it is posted. All right, let's go ahead and get jumping right on into the news of the week. Let's recap some of the stuff. I know I'm not going to cover a lot of things that I missed over the past week, but we are going to talk about the big news that dropped over the course of this past week. So let's go with the first big one. Christian Horner is out. He has been fired from Red Bull, and after serving in that role for the better part of 20 years, Christian Horner, it was announced earlier this week that he has been fired, relieved of his duties. He will now be replaced by Laurent Mekies, who was the team principal at the Racing Bulls team. So he's going to move up to become CEO of the Red Bull F1 team, as well as the team principal, basically taking over for Christian Horner. Meanwhile, Alan Permanane will be the new team principal with Racing Bulls. So there's some big shakeups in the Formula One paddock. I don't think anybody really saw any of that coming, but some crazy stuff going on. We'll have to see what happens later. And will Christian Horner be back in an F1 paddock? We'll have to find out. I'll be very curious to see if maybe some other teams might want to take a chance on him. But definitely, I think a lot of people saw the writing on the wall here, especially given the controversy with that sexual harassment controversy that he was dealing with last year. And now, obviously, the team is not performing up to expectations. Yuki Tsunoda has struggled, as well as Liam Lawson. Meanwhile, Max Verstappen has pretty much said that the car is not where it should be. So a lot of things going on in that Red Bull camp. We'll have to keep monitoring to see what happens. And if Laurent Mekies can actually maybe change things and make Red Bull better again, who knows? We'll have to find out. But for the second and final part of the Formula One news segment so far this week, we do know now that Racer is reporting that ESPN and Apple are interested in Formula One broadcasting rights in the United States. Now, this comes on the heel. Obviously, ESPN has had Formula One on its channel and on its digital platforms since the 2018 season, but Apple have just come out with the F1 movie, obviously showing how much it means to them, how much they're invested in this brand. So could we see a world where maybe we have a split Formula One broadcast schedule here in the United States? Or maybe could we have to change from ESPN to Apple TV Plus? I don't know. It'll be very interesting to see as that contract starts getting closer here to ending. Now let's talk about some IndyCar news, because we do have a lot to get through. Some stuff from happening last week, some stuff from happening this week. Let's go ahead and jump right on into it. The first piece of news is that Roger Penske has announced some the new replacements after the May firings when Tim Cindric and Kyle Moyer and everybody was let go from the team. Well, now we know that Jonathan Duguid has taken over the role of Penske Racing president, while Travis Law, a former championship-winning mechanic with Joseph Newgarden, will be Team Penske's new competition director. So some big shakeups there, but not really all that different. They have been, especially Jonathan Duguid. He's been overseeing the Penske Porsche program, so really not much of a change, but definitely it's going to be different. It's going to be different. Usually we've seen, we're so used to Tim Cindric, so used to Kyle Moyer, and the past month, a little over a month now, we've been having to get used to that not being the case, and I think that Penske is really struggling. We'll talk about that later on here in the show when we get to the race recap section, but man, some crazy changes, some big blowing up, some, a lot of stuff going on in the IndyCar paddock. And that's not all, because Racer also reports that the IndyCar's 2026 schedule is shaping up, with Doug Boles going on record as saying that the series is indeed aiming for another 17 races, but also could get 18 but also get 16. And here's the details. So obviously we know that the Arlington Grand Prix has already been confirmed. We already know that Thermal Club is not coming back next year. And it's highly anticipated that IndyCar at some point within the next couple of weeks should announce something with the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez down in Mexico City for a potential IndyCar race that would likely happen around March-ish of next year. Now, here's the thing that's really it's kind of going to bug me. It's going to probably bother a lot of other people. But apparently, according to Doug Bowles, and well, not Doug Bowles, but according to Racer and Marshall Pruitt, the future of IndyCar at Iowa is very, very up in the air. Because apparently, if this weekend's races are not successful, the series could leave Iowa entirely. Now remember, we don't have Hy-Vee promoting the race anymore. When Hy-Vee was promoting the race, you had tons of people coming out both days to the Iowa Speedway. Now, I think a lot of people kind of assumed, myself included, that Iowa would at least drop down to one race per season instead of being a doubleheader. But Marshall Pruitt is now saying that it could go away entirely, which would again devastate most of the oval fans, if not all of the oval fans in the IndyCar paddock, as well as all of the oval drivers in the IndyCar paddock, because that would again be one less oval, and we wouldn't have a replacement. Again, I've said this on my own personal podcast, which you can listen to at Robin Roller, spelled just as it sounds. We published a new episode on Wednesday, so be sure to check that out. But I've been saying this for a long time. IndyCar cannot continue to abandon these ovals, and they need to invest their own money in a promotion effort that will actually help bring fans to these oval events. Now, why do we see bigger crowds at other oval tracks? Well, Indianapolis, obviously, that's promoted by IndyCar and Roger Penske's team and Doug Bowles and everybody. But every other race just about is being promoted by a different company or a different person. And that is what has caused a lot of the schedule problems within IndyCar over the past several years, if not decade and a half. And so they've really got to do something to fix this, because I am concerned that if we don't see good crowds this weekend at Iowa, it could be the last time IndyCar goes to Iowa for the foreseeable future. And if history's told us anything, once they stop going to an oval track, they don't have any plans on going back. So just, if you're in Iowa, if you have the ability to go to one of these Iowa races, I implore you, for the sake of IndyCar oval racing, please go out there and see at least one of these races. It needs it at this point. So, but now I'm going to stop preaching, get off my soapbox here, and talk about something else that Doug Bowles said over the course of the week, also to Racer. He said that IndyCar does not have any interest in a quote-unquote NASCAR-style playoff system. So that's great news. There's going to be no IndyCar playoffs coming anytime soon, and that's great because we already don't have guaranteed entries for the Indy 500, so at least IndyCar is doing something right on that front. But Doug Bowles, this is the interesting thing that he said. He also said that he was open to an all-star type concept. So an all-star race concept, maybe not necessarily a all-star race like we know it with NASCAR, or maybe as we've known it with last year's Thermal Club race, but maybe a revival of something like the Marlboro Challenge. If you're a longtime IndyCar fan, you know what that was. We could see. I'd be very curious to see, especially, and Doug Bowles and the Racer article as well brought up lots of different things with Formula One going to sprint races and other types of sports, coming out with in-season tournaments and things to kind of spice up what appears to sometimes be the lull of the mid-season. So definitely something to look forward to on that front, see what IndyCar does going forward. Now, finally, as we talked about the race in Iowa, this is one thing that's important to note, is IndyCar is actually making a series of aerodynamic changes aimed at improving the ability to pass. Now, remember, last year, NASCAR came to Iowa for the first time and repaved the upper groove, and basically it created a great race for the Cup Series, but a terrible race for the IndyCars, which is, again, status quo for NASCAR, ruining their race for IndyCar, ruining their racetrack for IndyCars, is what it is. But IndyCar is trying to counter some of that. So they're basically trying to do away with some of the heavy downforce, maybe make for these cars have a little bit less downforce that would likely increase some passing, make these guys get out of the throttle, maybe see some more tire wear going on. I hope it's good. Again, we're going to have kind of a late afternoon, early evening race on Saturday, and then about a 1 o'clock race on Sunday. So very different track conditions we'll be seeing over the week. I'm just curious to see how these changes do depending on what type of track we are going to get. So that is it for the IndyCar news this week. Let's go ahead and take our first break of the show. And when we come back, we will discuss all of the NASCAR news that broke over this past week, as well as from 2 weeks ago while I was enjoying my vacation. So do not go anywhere. You are watching The Racing Report. And we're back on The Racing Report. My name is Rob Peeters. So glad to have you here. We're going to start talking about some NASCAR news today. Let's go ahead and get right on into it, as we've been talking about basically since this show came around to be. We've been talking about the NASCAR lawsuit involving 2311 and Front Row Motorsports. Well, some big developments happened in that regard over the past week. The U.S. Court of Appeals has denied 2311 and Front Row Motorsports requests for a rehearing on the reversal of the injunction that forced NASCAR to recognize the two as chartered organizations. So basically what happened is, we talked about this last week or a couple weeks ago, last time we had our show, that the U.S. court basically overturned that injunction and said, no, we're not going to, this is not true anymore. You guys are going to have to participate as unchartered teams. And both teams said, no, we want a rehearing of this. We don't accept that. Well, now this Court of Appeals has rejected their appeal for a rehearing. And as a result of that, it means that the result of the preliminary injunction that basically had been allowing 2311 and FRM to compete as chartered teams since the beginning of the season will expire as of July 16th. So the weekend of Dover, which is July 19th to the 20th, could be the first weekend where both 2311 and FRM will be forced to compete without their charters. Now, interesting to note, obviously most races nowadays see about 36, 37 entries max, so failing to qualify isn't that big of a fear, I guess. But somebody did point out that last weekend in Chicago, had Bubba Wallace not had a charter, he would have also DNQ'd alongside his teammate Corey Heim. So some very big things to look forward to here, depending on how big these NASCAR entry lists for the Cup Series get going forward. 2311 and FRM might start to sweat a little bit, as they might be forced to compete without charters, and then also be at risk for failing to qualify for a race, which would really damage the team in general, hurt sponsorship, hurt team morale, hurt a lot of things. So we'll just have to see what happens here as the days go forward and the clock ticks on that expiration. So, oh man, how about this? Here's another big piece of news we got to discuss, and I apologize. We should have talked about this all last week, but again, I was on vacation. Oh well. Daniel Suarez and Trackhouse Racing announced that the two will be parting ways effective at the end of the 2025 NASCAR season. No real future has been announced. We don't know where Daniel Suarez is going to go next year, and we also don't know who's going to drive Suarez's car next year. Of course, a lot of people have pointed toward the likelihood of Connor Zilisch moving up and taking over that spot, but also could be maybe somebody else who's trying to get into the Cup Series or trying to maybe get a better seat in the Cup Series. Lots of things changing in that regard, but yeah, Daniel Suarez with the team that he's been with since 2021, Splitsville. End of 2025, they're going their separate ways. But I don't think that Daniel Suarez is going to be without a Cup ride. I very much do think that there's got to be at least one team out there willing to take a chance on him, willing to grab him. Because, again, he does bring sponsorship. He does bring a very passionate fan base. There's a lot of positive things to signing Daniel Suarez that I think a NASCAR team could find. And we'll just have to see which team that ends up being. Now, next piece of news. We talked about last week, we had the NASCAR Chicago Street Race, which was supposed to be the third and final race under its 3-year contract. But we now know that the city of Chicago as well would like NASCAR to return. However, they are requesting that NASCAR maybe finds a different date other than the 4th of July, saying that, there's already a lot of tourism here. We really don't need more during this time. We'd like to just keep that tourism that are coming here for fireworks and coming here to see family as that, and not add extra headaches, logistical issues, traffic problems on top of trying to have a NASCAR race around Grant Park at the same time. So it will be interesting to see where the negotiations go, whether or not NASCAR and the city of Chicago continue to negotiate and maybe move the Chicago street races date, or if NASCAR decides to just move the street race period from Chicago to San Diego. Would that mean going back to Chicagoland? I don't know. I think it's too early to be seen. There's been a ton of rumors that say NASCAR is going to return to Chicagoland next year, but nothing's been formally announced. And if you saw Carson Hocevar, he posted a YouTube video where he did explore Chicagoland Speedway. It looks okay, but it will need some work, and I'll be curious to see how much money NASCAR will need to invest in order to bring Chicagoland Speedway back up to acceptable conditions, and depending on how much money that will take could very well likely determine whether or not the series even tries to go back there at all. All these things are going to be interesting to watch in the coming weeks and months, so we'll keep you updated here on the Racing Report as soon as we know. Now, another piece of interesting news regarding the NASCAR schedule is that we do know where the Clash will take place next year, is that NASCAR has announced that the Clash will return to Bowman Gray next year, which is, I think, what everybody expected, at least what I expected, especially we talked about a couple of weeks ago, the city of Winston-Salem basically telling NASCAR, hey, we're going to upgrade Bowman Gray Stadium. We're going to put the funds in to upgrade this track, but we need you to commit to bring at least one National Series race here a year. So could this be part of that that condition that the city of Winston-Salem made for NASCAR? Possibly, I don't know, but it could be just coincidental timing, or it could be actually this is it. So we'll just have to see. And then finally, we've got a couple of other minor pieces of news to discuss here. Legacy Motor Club says that Dollar Tree has signed an extension to continue sponsoring the team through at least 2028. So that's some big news there. That's a lot of good cash influx, and that kind of gives Jimmy Johnson a little bit more freedom to maybe not rely on funded drivers and be able to just hire based on talent, especially considering he would like to get a third charter for that team, and it's still up in the air. But hey, we talked about Dover coming up here in a couple of weeks. Guess who's coming to the Xfinity race that week? Yes, Ryan Truex is going to try and defend his winning streak at Dover. He's won the last two Xfinity Series races there. Now he's going to try and do it again, though he won't be with Joe Gibbs Racing. He will be with Sam Hunt Racing in the number 24 Toyota, but definitely still going for a third straight win at up there at his home track of Dover. And now here's the final piece of NASCAR news to discuss. Anderson native Greg Van Alst has announced that he has formed his own NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series team, and that will race part-time in the series beginning at Indianapolis Raceway Park on July 25th. So to all my fellow Hoosiers out there who are heading out to IRP that weekend for the ARCA and Truck doubleheader, you will get to see, hopefully he makes the race, Greg Van Alst go out there and make his first start with his new truck team. All right. That's it for the NASCAR news. Let's go ahead and take our final break of the show. And when we come back, we're going to recap all of the races that happened over the weekend and get you ready for the upcoming races for this weekend. So do not go anywhere. You are watching The Racing Report. And we are back on the Racing Report. Thank you guys so much for tuning in again. Let's go ahead and break down the Formula One British Grand Prix that was held over the weekend. What a fun race that was. Rain races in Formula One are always the great equalizer, especially races that have very, what's the word I'm looking for? Unpredictable track conditions. And I think you saw that there with a number of two drivers actually bailing before the start even happened, saying, oh, well, we're not going to go on intermediate tires. We're actually going to go on the slick tires. Well, that didn't go so well. The intermediate tires ended up being the right thing, even though you had to be really careful with them so as you didn't burn them up before the rain actually came. The rain came in about 10 or 15 laps after the start of the race, so a lot of those drivers that stayed out on inters were having to basically baby and nurse their tires all the way through that until the rain picked up, and those drivers who came in early to get slicks had to pit again. Interesting. But let's talk about this. Lando Norris was the victor. It was his first time winning his home Grand Prix in the British Grand Prix. And then also it was the first time Lewis Hamilton was not on the podium in a long, long time at the British Grand Prix. But one person who was on the podium was none other than Nico Hülkenberg. And I believe his 239th Formula One race finally stepped on the podium over the weekend. It was a huge deal. Everybody was thrilled. Formula One fans all over the world, regardless of who you cheer for, I think you just had to be happy to see that. That was a wonderful, wonderful moment, seeing Nico Hülkenberg finally step up on that podium. I think a lot of people have always wondered, if it will even happen. Will it happen? And yes, it finally has. Nico Hülkenberg has finished on the podium in a Formula One race. And let's also talk about Oscar Piastri real quick here, because he was penalized. He was given a substantial 10-second penalty because the race stewards basically said that he was brake checking the field on a restart, on a safety car restart. I think that it was a little bit of a harsh penalty, but even then, I see where the stewards are coming from. But it could have been a little bit different, that race outcome, had that penalty not happened. But I digress. He still finished second. You still had Hülkenberg on the podium. I just don't see how you can't love that. So let's go ahead and move on now into the IndyCar race at Mid-Ohio. Scott Dixon finally became the first IndyCar driver in 2025, not named Alex Palou or Kyle Kirkwood, to win a race, only because Alex Palou made a mistake with 6 laps to go coming out of turn 9. Just screwed up the car, got into the marbles, got off course. Dixon just flew by, and the rest was history. Dixon went on to win. Palou finished second, but that's not all. Palou did actually increase his lead from what I believe was like a 90-some point lead to now a 113-point lead over Kyle Kirkwood. So now the question remains, can Chevrolet win at all? At all. Honda has won every single race so far. A Honda engine has won every single IndyCar race so far in 2025. Now we're going to a doubleheader in Iowa. I think surely a Chevrolet can win. Maybe an Arrow McLaren car, right? Maybe an Ed Carpenter car. We'll see. We'll just see. Now let's talk about the NASCAR weekend in Chicago. What a good race that was. Always cool to see that event running around the streets of Chicago. Relatively good weather. They were chasing rain for a little bit, but it did stay dry for quite some bit. But Shane Van Gisbergen owns the Chicago street course. That guy has now won, I believe, all but one of the events that have ever taken place, or all but 2 maybe, that have ever taken place on that track. Counting in the Xfinity Series and in the Cup Series. He's 2 for 3 in the Cup Series, I can tell you that. And obviously he swept the weekend winning the Xfinity Series in the Cup race. Just, who didn't see that coming? Because I surely did. I kind of felt after SVG won in Mexico City, I felt like he was going to use that momentum to go on and probably win again in Chicago. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. Of course, after the race, there was a lot of controversy because of the bad accident that suffered by Cody Ware when his brakes basically failed and he ran head on into a concrete barrier. Granted, there were some tires there to stop him, but definitely not a lot. I think I read that his Hans device actually cracked in the accident, which it just goes to show you just how much force he had. But NASCAR didn't immediately throw the yellow at the time. They waited a significant amount until throwing the yellow, and there was a lot of controversy regarding that. I think NASCAR is going to go back and review how they some of the procedures and how they handled that, which is good. But still, yes, very bad accident. Good to see Cody Ware at least get out of the car and be okay. But again, another instance of a late race crash in which a car is basically buried under tire barriers and NASCAR not throwing the caution soon enough or waiting too long. And it's just not a very good look. So maybe they'll change things up going on later on for the future. But again, if they haven't done it yet, I'm not going to really hold my breath. But hey, let's talk about some of the races that are coming up this week before we wrap up the show, because there's a lot of them, and I'm excited to watch them. This weekend, we're going road course racing again in NASCAR, the Cup Series and the Xfinity Series, as well as the ARCA Menard Series. West will be in Sonoma and wine country for the weekend out there. The Truck Series, again, is still off for another couple of weeks. They're not going to come back until July 25th at IRP. So everybody watching here in Indianapolis, get ready for that. The Truck Series and the ARCA Series are returning to IRP. We've also got some great interviews with a couple of local ARCA drivers, Brayton Laster and Presley Sora, that you can watch on demand anytime you want right here on WTHR Plus to get you ready for that race when it's coming up here in a couple of weeks. But then, hey, as we talked about, the IndyCar Series also has a race this weekend, too, actually. They're going to have a doubleheader at the Iowa Speedway. And like I said, please, if you are in the area, please try to get tickets for that in some way, shape, or form. I don't care how you get it. Official, non-official, scalper, whatever you have to do, just make sure that there's butts in seats and tickets are getting scanned going into that race, because that's, again, I would hate to see anything happen to this Iowa race, especially when we get 2 races and double the oval events that we have on the calendar. To go from 2 to none at Iowa would just be a depressing development. So, but in a little bit happier news, I guess, the Formula E season is coming to a close here. We've got about, I believe this is the penultimate round in Formula E at the ever-popular Berlin Tempelhof Airport. They'll have a doubleheader as well this weekend. So Formula E coming up. I always like the Berlin Tempelhof circuit. It's a very interesting circuit. It's a kind of on that aircraft hangar, and it always puts on some really, really entertaining races. So be sure to check that out if you have a chance. The supercars will be back in action as well this weekend. They're going to have the Townsville 500. That's going to be a thrilling race. I'm looking forward to that. See how Brock Feeney if he's going to extend his championship lead. Can he sweep the weekend again? Or will somebody else be victorious in supercars? We'll find out. Looking forward to that. And then finally, let's talk about the IMSA WeatherTech Series. They're going to Mosport at Canadian Tire Motorsports Park. Always a great event, that one. And remember, it's mainly just GT cars in that one. So just, prepare yourself for that ahead of time. But that is it for this episode of the Racing Report. I really appreciate you guys tuning in. Thanks for bearing with me as I enjoyed a nice little much-needed week off. I'm back now, and I'm so glad that I am, and I'm so glad you guys have continued to tune in every single week. So next week we will be back. I promise that we'll be back going forward. But for everybody here at WTHR Plus, thank you again for watching. My name is Rob Peeters, and this has been the Racing Report.